Vito, if you want to open the meeting.
I do, thank you. So I'm going to call to order this 27th of April 2023 meeting of the Application Review Subcommittee of the Board. I want to welcome our president, Dr. Milan, and members of the board and any of the citizens of California that are dialing into this. I hope you will cut me a little bit of Robert's Rules of Order slack. This is a maiden voyage. For me, maiden voyages usually end well, except for the USS Titanic. That didn't end so well, but we'll try not to mimic that history. And I'll have lots of help as we go forward. But given we had to wait a few extra minutes for quorum, I think we should get started with the calling of the roll. Thank you.
Dan Bernal.
Present.
Maria Bonneville.
Present.
Judy Chow. We're expecting her. Leandra Clark Harvey.
Present. Right now.
Anne Marie Dulage.
Present.
Isabel Duran.
Here.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Here.
Fred Fisher.
Here.
Elena Flowers. David Higgins.
David's in the car.
We'll come back. Vito Mbasiani.
Present.
Steve Julesgard.
Present.
Rich Lahara.
Present.
Christy Muskowski. Lauren Miller Rogan.
Here.
Adriana Padilla. We are expecting her. Joe Panetta.
Here.
Hourlet. Marvin Southard. Marvin, are you on mute? You're on mute, Marvin? Oh, okay, I see you. All right. Carol Watson. Okay.
You want to check with David?
Oh, yeah, David Higgins.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we can proceed, Vito.
Thank you very much. We have two sets of applications to review today. And unless there's a procedural reason why not, I'm going to hand this over to Gil for the presentation of the translational applications.
Okay, thank you, Vito. So the presentation today is going to be led by Dr. Haley Lamb. So she's the Associate Director for the Portfolio Development and Review team. So Haley, whenever you're ready, please feel free to begin.
Good morning to the board. It's a pleasure to present for you today, and I will share my screen shortly. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So as always, we begin with our mission statement: accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. And today I'm here to talk to you about the translational program, which falls squarely in the middle of our pipeline. So we have our discovery, early candidate discovery, and then our translation program and our clinical. And so a little bit more about the translational program. It's actually a combination of 4 different types of products that can be submitted. So we have therapeutics, diagnostics, medical devices, and tools. And each of these has slightly different timelines and budgets according to the product type. And in addition to that, there's slight differences in terms of what the expectations are coming into and coming out of a TRAN award. So here we've just outlined briefly all of the projects that come into the translational program need to have some kind of proof of concept with either the candidate or the prototype of the device. And on completion, hopefully successful completion of a translational award, the projects will have completed a pre-IND or other equivalent meeting with the FDA, or for a tool, proceed to transfer to manufacturing. So despite the differences in some of these programs, all of them are evaluated in a similar way. So, oh, it skipped ahead. There we go. All right, so all of the projects are evaluated with the same scientific review criteria, which we've outlined here, but very briefly. Does a project have the necessary significance potential for impact? Does it have a sound rationale? Is it well planned and designed? Is it feasible? And does it uphold principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And the scoring system for the scientific score is a scale of 1 to 100. Everything that is scored above 85 or above is a recommendation for funding if funds are available. And anything 84 and below is not recommended for funding. And all of the applications are scored by scientific members of the panel with no conflict. And the final score is determined by the median of all the individual scores submitted by the scientific panel members. The translation program also has a DEI scoring, and this is scored by the GWG board members. It has a different scale. The scale for the DEI scoring is a scale of 0 to 10. And we've outlined here sort of the breakdown. The 9 to 10 is considered an outstanding response. 6 to 8 is responsive. 3 to 5, not fully responsive, and 0 to 2, 3 to 5 is not fully responsive, and 0 to 2 is not responsive. And we have the rubric here on the left that is used for evaluation of this. I'll also actually note that we just recently posted this rubric on our website, the CERM website, if you're interested in seeing it more closely and not squinting at the tiny font here that we have.
Haley,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So we've got a fabulous rubric. What are the consequences?
She's got a conflict.
Oh, sorry. I have a conflict. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Figured it out.
Oh, well, I will note actually, since we are here, that so just to outline the roles and composition of the panel that evaluates these applications, scientific members score on the scientific score, which I outlined previously, the 1 to 100, and then the GWG board members, which are our patient advocate and nurse members, score the DEI from the scale of 0 to 10 on all applications. And then we also have ad hoc panel members, scientific specialists that come in and provide expertise on applications in specific areas that may not be covered by our panel members. And they provide initial scoring, but do not vote for the final score. In terms of what is presented in front of you today, we had 20 total applications that went to full review for the panel, and 9 of them are recommended. And 11 are not recommended. I will say that here that we've outlined recommended for funding as a score of 85 to 100 on the scientific side. However, that also includes the DEI scoring, which requires a minimum of a DEI score of 6 to 10 to also come to you as the ARS. All right, so this is the GWG recommendations. However, I want to point out, we also have what is called minority reports. So under the Proposition 14, any application that's not recommended for funding, however, had 35% or more of the members score in the fundable range, has to include a minority report. And so these minority reports were included in the summaries that were posted to all of you, and provides a synopsis of what the reviewers who supported the funding of the application thought on that particular application. And so these in this particular round, there were 2 applications that received minority reports, which I'm going to discuss in more detail. And I would like to note that of these 2, the first one, Tran 14710, has a recommendation from the CERM team to support the minority position for this application and recommend funding. So to go through both of these applications individually, the first one, Tran 14710, is The title is AAV Gene Therapy for Treating Congenital Hereditary Endothelial Dystrophy Associated with Biallelic Mutations. So this is a pediatric hereditary disease that can cause basically clouding of the cornea. The current standard of care is corneal transplantation, and this is involves surgery and is a technically difficult procedure with a significant burden and often needs to be repeated. So the impact of this particular proposal is that this gene therapy could offer an alternative treatment for this rare disease, and it could potentially pave the way for similar treatments in other inherited corneal diseases. And I will take the time here to just read the minority report. So this is directly from the summary itself. 13 scientific GWG members scored this application, 8 GWG members scored from 70 to 80, and 5 scored 85 to 90. All scoring panelists agreed that the project had the significance and potential impact required for a CERN project and upheld the principles of DEI. Nearly all thought the project had a sound rationale and activities were feasible. All comments on the preliminary data were positive. One supportive reviewer described the preliminary data as, quote, extensive, and noted the applicants completed studies in a relevant preclinical model and corneal tissues from multiple humans, dogs, rabbits, and cats. The panel was divided on whether the proposed project plan was sufficiently sound. For the most part, supportive panelists agreed with the majority that the regulatory strategy needed work, while the majority wanted to see the project plan revised with a fuller characterization of the product and more input from the FDA or a regulatory consultant. The reviewers who scored 85 or higher found the project meritorious despite weaknesses in the current project plans. This support appeared to be derived by the value proposition. Supportive reviewers noted that the proposed gene therapy would be an alternative to corneal transplantation, which requires donor tissue and trained surgeons. The disease indication has a high prevalence in some underserved racial ethnic groups, and the project could validate the potential for gene therapy for more prevalent inherited ocular disorders. And finally, the applicant is testing a novel delivery method for gene therapies. So that is the minority report for this application, and a brief explanation on the CERM team recommendation for this. So the CERM team believes that the concerns about the project plans that were outlined in the minority report could be resolved with the CERM post-award support and the collaboration with the Foundation for NIH Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium, of which this project would be a part of. And just as a note, this Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium is a public-private partnership which involves a lot of different multiple NIH institutions, pharma, biotech, and advocacy groups, as well as the FDA. And so the support from CERM team is that the concerns from the panel around the regulatory and the planning for the project could be resolved with support from CERM and this consortium in tandem. So that is application 14710. And minority report for the second application, Tran 414725. So this application title is the development of a low-cost clinical grade iPS maintenance medium for enabling stem cell therapy manufacturing. So the impact here would be that this media for manufacturing of the iPS cell-based therapies could offer a lower cost and lower risk alternative for developers. And I will also read the minority report for this application. If you give me a moment. All right, here we go. This application was scored by 14 GWG panelists. One panelist scored 55, 8 panelists scored 75 to 80, and 5 scored 85 to 90. The reviewers who recommended the application for funding thought that the development of a clinical grade medium would have significant value. Some reviewers who recommended the application acknowledged that the product would not address other bottlenecks in iPSC development, but thought that it was unrealistic to address all bottlenecks, and that this application tackles one of many, a serum-free, chemically defined medium as a tool for manufacturing for iPS cell-based therapies. In addition, a reviewer who recommended the application also acknowledges every developer may have their own customized media, but this application is about offering a novel, quote, base cell culture medium, end quote, with all customizations achieved by the addition of different supplements, as is true for every product and process in the cell therapy field. Reviewers agreed that the plan is logical, the timeline is reasonable, and the scientific proof of concept is established. The reviewers who recommended the application largely agreed that the project acknowledged the limitations of addressing DEI at this stage and for this type of product, though one reviewer thought the applicants could have provided more information specific to their product. So that is the minority report for the second application. And that concludes my presentation, I believe. So I will go to the last slide with board members with conflicts. Thank you, and I'll hand it back to Dr. Mbasiane.
Vito,
You're on mute.
you're on mute.
Thanks. Gil, are we going to hear anything more next about any of the applications? Or
We should show the spreadsheet, so all of you have the rank order of these applications that shows the 9 that are recommended in green and the total amount that would be, which is about 45.5 million. And then below that, the one that's right under the last green one is the application that the STERM team is recommending for funding that has a minority report. And so, and then those that are below that.
okay.
Hopefully, can people see the spreadsheet being shared?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I can see all of the green and only one of the minority reports. Can you scroll down perhaps? Okay, there it is, Tran 4, right. So if I can ask for legal advice at this point, are we ready to accept the first of the 4 standard motions related to accepting these?
We are.
Oh,
Yes, some questions
Vito,
outstanding,
there are
too.
some questions.
Thank you. I don't,
Okay,
I
Fred
don't-
Fisher. Fred Fisher.
thank you.
Hi, thanks. I want a couple of questions connected to Haley's presentation. Haley, I thought I understood you to say that any applications that don't receive a score of 6 or higher on the DEI but did receive a score of 85 or higher would not come to this group for approval. Is that right? My recollection is the 1 or 2 times this has happened, those proposals have been moved to not funded because they did not achieve a minimum DEI score of 6. If that happened
Correct.
here,
Yes, correct. So the applications that are recommended here have 85 or above and a DEI score
of
of
6 or above.
of 6 or above, correct? Yes.
So in the future, is it possible to create another column that shows the DEI score?
Yeah, I was just thinking that this morning as I was looking at this spreadsheet. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And on application 14710, I didn't hear you mention the DEI discussion. Do you have the DEI score?
Yeah, so the DEI score for 14710 was a score of 7.
Okay, thank you.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, thank you. It was difficult for me because I don't know if it's on my side only, but presentations were often interrupted with poor quality internet. But in any case, my questions for these two applications, and particularly the first one is, given the scores, what is the justification for potentially changing this? Or could we ask the two applicants to go back, improve their applications based on feedback, and come back a second time with hopefully higher scores?
Yes, so any application that is not funded by the ARS committee can return and submit again to the next round of translational applications. And to that effect, I believe the next round of translational applications hasn't been released yet. We just posted the PA, but the next due date should be, I believe, the due date will be in mid-June. I can't remember the exact date at the moment off the top of my head.
Haley, if I understand that question correctly, it's why are we not relegating these two reports to a category to be considered in the future and not now?
Well, they are in the not recommended, they are in the not recommended sort of, if you look at the spreadsheet, right, it's this one and this one. We just bring to your special attention these two particular applications because they have the minority report. And again, as I said, there is a CERM team recommendation to fund this first one.
But not the second one.
But not the second one, correct.
Okay.
Next question,
and
Steve.
And just to finish that point, the reason for the CERM staff recommendation to fund 14710 is that the team feels they can address the deficiencies with the applicant as part of moving forward, as opposed to requiring major work that would be part of a reapplication process. I think
Great.
that's what I understood.
Correct. Yeah.
The translation.
Are you ready for me now?
Have a chance to work it out. Let's
Yep, we're ready, Steve.
Okay, I have a series of questions related to 14726. This is I'll call it the process science application. So let me start by noting that on all of these applications, with few exceptions, these are all really focused on diseases that want to be addressed. This particular application is focused on something entirely different, which falls into the realm of what I call process sciences leading up to manufacturing. So it's a very different bird, if you will. So my first question is, when the composition of the GWG, what percentage of the GWG reviewers had any experience of import with process science issues?
Yeah, so for the translational panel, we have a mix of scientific disease area experts with manufacturing and CMC experts, which would apply, I think, in this particular case, and also regulatory experts. And so the composition of the panel is broken down, I wouldn't say evenly across those, but across the panel of 15, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me for this particular panel, but there was at least 3 or 4 manufacturing folks that could speak to this particular application on the panel for sure.
So for those 3 or 4, what did they think of this application? Forget about what the others thought about it, but were they supportive of this application or not? Here's what I worry about is that this is one of those non-sexy areas, although it's a really important area. It's very much overlooked, typically speaking. So the whole area of developing a process, in this case, for the manufacture of cells or development of cells, in this case for clinical grade material, is really a very important issue. And I don't think enough people appreciate that. So what I would not like to see is something that makes life easier for people that are developing, cell lines for clinical work, making their life easier by having a media that essentially can be used cross cell lines, that somehow gets swept under the carpet simply because we don't have the right people making the decision about whether this is a worthwhile project or not. So if you could speak to that concern, that I would very much appreciate it, because from my point of view, when I looked at the review, I thought, the comments that people made, first of all, that there were a bunch of bottlenecks that they didn't address. And what the minority report said is, yeah, but those bottlenecks are irrelevant to what they're trying to do. Yeah, there are bottlenecks, but this particular project is designed to only address one bottleneck, not 5 bottlenecks. And then I didn't see much else around this that said, and so this is not a worthwhile project. So when I looked at this in total, I had a hard time understanding, the scoring system. And in particular, when you have a standard deviation of 9, which is extremely high, and you have one person who scores it at a 55. And if that were a manufacturing or process science person, then that would end the discussion for me. But if it's not, then I worry about, their capability of really scoring something like this. So I'm looking at GWG process and trying to understand if it's a fair process for this application in this setting.
Yeah, so I guess I could speak a little bit to sort of what I took as the key concerns on this application, to speak more generally, I think. And those sort of fell into, I think, 3 different areas. So the first was just the value proposition, which, as you pointed out, those reviewers that scored to recommend the application did think that this particular one did address one bottleneck of many. I think the panelists who were in the majority perhaps felt that the applicant perhaps didn't discuss the other bottlenecks that were possible. So I think what happens often when reviewers comment on value proposition is not necessarily that they don't think that the particular project has promise or has value, but that they don't discuss it in context with the other possible bottlenecks within the field of iPSC cell therapy. The other thing is that the other concerns on this application were some details in the quality systems. They thought that the applicant could have provided a little bit more detail on those areas. And the final thing was that they also thought that there could be some improvement on the DEI. The DEI score for this one was a 6. So that was the sort of the 3 main things. And I don't know if Gil wants to jump in here as well, because I see his hand.
Yeah, so I suppose that's after Gil.
Sorry, I was not going to directly comment on the what Haley just said, which is accurate. I think the only thing I would add is that when we determine who's going to review applications, we assign each of these to 3 scientific members and one of the patient advocate members. So of the panel, we select the ones that are most appropriate and have the greatest level of expertise to do the primary assessment of these applications. The second thing I wanted to point out, which is just more general, is the amount of funding that we have available for this round. So if you look at the amount that's recommended by the grants working group, as mentioned earlier, it's $45.5 million. The amount that we have in our budget is about 49, which means if the Application Review Subcommittee were to fund the 9 plus the 1 recommended by the team, that would essentially eat up all of the budget. So we would not have additional funds for any other applications. So I just want to point that out in terms of the consideration of the applications that needs to be taken into account if you choose to do a different one or additional ones.
All right, that's helpful, Gil. So I understand that part of it. I want to go back to the comments that Haley made. First of all, Haley, those people who commented on additional bottlenecks not being addressed, I mean, in some sense, only validates my point, which is, it seems to me that they're more focused on things that this project wasn't designed to deal with, which are irrelevant to this project. So I don't quite understand that criticism coming in from reviewers. If it's for process sciences people making these comments, I would find that surprising. And as far as, the DEI goes, we're talking about culture media here. We're talking about something that's about as neutral to the world as you can imagine. It's basically how can we best grow cells, consistently across a whole variety of cell types. So I'm not quite sure, I think we have to be careful with DEI because there are some places in which the role it plays is really difficult to see vis-a-vis the project that's, in play. And I think this is one of those because, as I said, cell types are cell types. And this is designed to, address as many as is possible, wherever they come from, whether they come from, a homogeneous population or a heterogeneous population. Anyway, I'm done with my comments, and I just, my concern is really about the process. I want to make sure when we in the future address these kind of programs that involve either process sciences or manufacturing, they don't get lost in the shuffle simply because we don't have the right people at the table.
No, absolutely. We definitely make, your point is well acknowledged. I think, just for reference, out of the 20 applications that were reviewed, 16 of them were the Tran1 therapeutics. There was 1 diagnostic, 2 devices, and 1 tool. So it's well acknowledged that definitely there is a greater emphasis on those Tran1 applications. So we'll definitely be paying close attention. We have been paying close attention to that, and we'll do so in the future as well. Thank you.
No, thank you.
No more hands raised, Vito.
Marianne, I'm sorry, that was no more hands raised?
Yeah, there's no more hands
Okay.
raised.
All right, then I would love to hear a motion that would, in our time-honored tradition of how to handle the groups of these applications. The first motion I would like to entertain would be, does any board member want to elevate any of the applications residing in the not recommended range, move it up to the recommended range for funding? And that can include minority reports that CIRM recommends we move up.
I'd move that we move up 14710.
Second,
Thank you, Marvin. I would like a second.
second.
Who said that? I'm sorry.
That was
Fred Fisher.
That's
Fred.
right.
Okay, thank you, Fred. I guess the floor is open for discussion on the motion.
Anne Marie has her hand raised, Vito.
Anne Marie,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's on my side that the voice doesn't work and I hear about half of the dialogue, but nonetheless, my question is still, what would be the justification for us to do that versus asking the applicant to revise their application and submit it in June?
I'm going to pass that question to the team.
Haley,
Yes.
could you address that in
Yes.
in terms of our recommendation?
So in terms of the team recommendation, we believe that the concerns that were outlined by the grants working group can be resolved with the CIRM support and with the work that they will be doing with the Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium, which this application would be a part of, or this project rather would be a part of, which offers NIH and FDA and as well as industry in-kind support for the projects that are within that consortium.
Just, am I the only one to hear only one sentence out of 10? Is it then good internet connection for all of you and it's my problem, which is possibly the case? Okay,
Seems
thank
to
you.
be, I can hear perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Turn
thank
the
you,
photo
thank
or
you.
video
That's,
off.
it's
Anne-Marie,
because I'm in
may-
France, and in France, even the internet is on strike. So,
Anne Marie, maybe it might help to turn your video off, and you might be able to hear better that way.
okay, that could be. Well, thank you. I didn't hear most of your explanation, but the fact that you had one is enough for me to vote yes. Okay.
Are there any other hands raised? I would have to scroll down to see that.
No,
No other hands raised. So we have a motion on the floor to elevate Tran 14710. This is an eye test here. From the not recommended to the recommended for funding category.
Vito,
Yes.
we should ask for public comment, please.
Oh, thank you. Do we have anyone on the line or in person at the headquarters building who would like to speak to this motion?
Currently, no, we don't.
Okay, hearing no additional comment, I think we're prepared to call the roll.
Okay.
A yes, just to be clear, a yes vote means you will move up Tran 14710 into the recommended for funding category.
Okay.
Can I, since this motion was specific to this particular project, is there going to be the opportunity to, for motions to move any other proposals? Or is the assumption that there are no other proposals? Because this motion was just about this one.
Yes.
Fred,
My understanding is that we do not have the funds to move another application up. Is that correct, Gil?
That is correct.
That's correct. So I think the motion right now is just to move the one application into the funding zone, but that doesn't prevent the committee from moving down some applications if you were to do that in order to allow others to come up. In other words, if you move this one up and all 9 plus that one are funded, it would take up the full budget.
That presents the quandary of we cannot elevate another one of the non-recommended up until we move one of the others down. So we will have to come back to this then. And that's fine. We can entertain a motion from the floor.
So Vito, we have a motion on the table that we need to vote on, please.
That's it. That's right. So once again, you are voting to elevate Tran 1-14710 to be funded.
Okay. Ready? Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Judy Chow,
Aye.
Leandra Clark Harvey,
Aye.
Anne-Marie Duliege,
Aye.
Isabel Duron,
I will say yes, except for those with which I'm in conflict, if that is the correct language to use.
yes is good enough for this one. Thank you. Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
Elena Flowers is not here. David Higgins.
Yes.
Thank you. Vito Mbashani,
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan, are you still on? Okay. Adriana Padilla,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
and Marvin Southard.
You're on mute, Marvin.
Marvin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Raphael,
Yes.
I thought because we have not closed out the not recommended range, that this motion would entertain all the conflicts for all the applications, especially there's a limited fund. So do you mind? I think we should redo the vote and not call on all the conflicted members, because we have not closed out the not recommended range.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do that again. Thank you, Ben. Pardon me if you're conflicted, and we had the list at the beginning. We can do it again. We'll do it. Thank you. Dan Bernal.
Aye.
Okay, you can't vote. Judy Chow.
Yes.
Okay. Anne-Marie Duliege. You're on mute, Anne-Marie. Okay, we'll come back. Fred Fisher.
Yes.
Okay, David Higgins.
Yes.
Vito Imbasciani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that's been, and then Marvin Southard.
You on mute, Marvin?
Yes.
All right.
Anne Marie Duliage, you were on mute before?
Anne Marie, are you there? Sure, she's unmuted.
Marie,
Yep.
voila.
Thank
Oh,
you.
there you go.
Thank you. All right, motion passes. Motion passes, thank you.
Motion passes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And now with respect to our second motion, I would like to hear any motions for consideration of moving a recommended application down into the not recommended range, either by virtue ipso facto, if you will, or by virtue of budget considerations, as we talked about earlier. The floor.
First,
Mhm.
Vito Haley has her hand raised.
I see. Haley, thank you.
I just have a brief update because I got a notification from the team that was able to look up the details on the voting for application Tran 414726, the media application in regards to Stephen Julgar's question about the voting breakdown.
Yes.
So two of the panelists who were manufacturing experts scored in the non-fundable range. So just a point of information there. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Haley.
That specifically addresses one of Stephen's concerns. Okay, so once again, looking for any motion, I'm not compulsive to me. For any of the ones that are colored green, these are recommended by the CERM team for funding. Do we want to remove any of these recommended applications from the funded group? Hearing no motion from the floor, I want to make sure that we're hearing Anne Marie. Anne Marie,
Yeah.
could you give us acknowledgement that you heard that?
Yes, absolutely. And I apologize because clearly my lack of quality of the internet doesn't help the flow of the meeting. So apologies, but I did hear this one. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So it is my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are no motions to move any of these green funded recommendations down. So hearing no motion, we can now proceed. Can we have a motion from the floor to not fund those that are in the not recommended range? So these would be all. These would be all the ones that are in white. And I see that you've now greened out the 1-14710. Good, thank you. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that I'm asking for a motion not to fund these 8.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second that I'm sure were
Yeah.
captured by
Yes.
Mary Ann.
Yes.
Laura and Dave.
Discussions from the board?
Yeah.
Discussions from the public?
There are none.
There are none. Okay, we can proceed to a vote, Raphael?
Okay, so yes, if you could vote yes or no, except for where you are conflicted, that would be great. Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Maria Bonneville,
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Judy Chow,
Yes.
Leander Clark Harvey,
Yes.
Anne Marie Duliege,
Yes.
Isabel Duron,
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Just a quick question. I would suspect because we're hitting a dollar limit that I'm not able to vote on this, even though I can say yes, except for those which have a conflict, but just want to clarify whether I'm eligible to vote or not.
Yes, with that caveat, you are.
Okay, well, with that caveat, then yes, except for those which have a conflict. Thank you.
Yep. Fred Fisher.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Elena Flower is not here. David Higgins.
David? David?
Yes. Yes.
Yes is your vote. Thank you. Okay. Vito Imbasciani.
Yes.
Steve Schulzgard.
Yes.
Rich Lahada.
Yes.
Okay. Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Great. Thank you. Marvin Southard.
Yes.
Yep. And Leandra, could you please vote again with the caveat as necessary because you're conflicted on a couple?
I'm sorry, I missed.
So you're conflicted on an application or two, and so if you could vote yes or no with the caveat of except for where I'm conflicted.
Okay, thank you.
So yes,
Yes,
except where.
I'm conflicted. Sorry.
Thank you very much. No worries. Appreciate it. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Okay, then we are at a point now where we need a motion to fund the applications of all the ones in green. That is the ones that are recommended by the team for funding. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Dan.
And a second.
And
Second from
Fred?
Fred.
Fred and Marvin.
No, that was not me.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I think it
Was
was
that
Marvin, yes.
Okay, Marvin second.
Thank you.
Got it.
All right, we have a movement and a second. I need discussion. Final discussion from members of the board.
There are no hands raised.
No hands are raised. Any comments from the general public?
There are none.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I think we can proceed, Raphael, to a vote.
Okay. Same process, yes or no? With the caveat of where you are conflicted. Okay. Dan Bernal.
Aye.
Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Got it. Judy Chow.
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey.
Yes, except those which I am conflicted.
Thank you. Anne Marie Duliege.
Yes.
Isabel Duron.
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Thank you. Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes, except for those which I have a conflict.
Thank you. Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Higgins.
David?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vito Imbasciani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgard.
Yes.
Rich Lahada.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Marvin Southard.
yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. That closes out the section of the agenda dealing with the translational applications. So Gil, may I ask you to introduce the next order of business, which are the clinical applications?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me share my screen so I can go through that slide deck. All right, so I'm going to present to you the recommendations from the grants working group related to the latest round of clinical applications that we received. Again, pointing out our mission as we do with the grants working group and all of the meetings that we hold. This is a update on the clinical budget status for the clinical program. We allocated 169 million, and this is where we are today. So far, 115 million have been approved by this committee. The amount that's requested today is 38.8 million, which would leave an unused balance of 15.1 if all are approved for funding. And that's for the fiscal year, which ends in June. The scientific scoring system that's used for clinical applications is different than it is from Japan. Here we use a score of 1, 2, or 3, where a score of 1 means that those applications have exceptional merit and warrant funding. Score of 2 means they need improvement and don't warrant funding, but can be revised to address areas of concern. And those typically go back to the applicant for resubmission and subsequent review by the grants working group. The score of 3 means that they are sufficiently flawed that it doesn't warrant funding at this time, and they can't be submitted for at least 6 months. The review criteria that are used mirror what Haley also showed for CRAN, which are the 5 umbrella criteria that are used. Does the project hold the necessary significance and potential for impact? Does it have a good rationale? Is it well planned and designed? Is it feasible, including having all the appropriate resources and team members? And does the project uphold the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion? The composition of the working group is much the same as Haley also showed for the clinical program. We have our scientific grants working group members conduct the scientific evaluation. Here too, we bring in a variety of disease area expertise, regulatory CNC, and other expertise as dictated by the types of applications that are being reviewed. Our grants working group board members conduct the DEI evaluation, provide the patient perspective on significance and impact, and then provide oversight on the process.
Yep.
We also bring scientific specialists as needed to provide ad hoc advice where there are knowledge gaps in the main panel. So before I get started with each of these applications, and in this case, we're going to take each application individually. These, however, are members that may have a conflict with one or more of these applications. The first application that we're going to discuss is CLIN 2-14315. So being a CLIN 2, this is for a clinical trial. The title is Reduced Intensity Conditioning with the candidate product, which we redacted prior to TCR alpha beta positive B cell CD19 positive B cell depleted hematopoietic stem cell transplant for Fanconi anemia patients. This therapy is an antibody that targets blood stem cells for conditioning regimen that is then followed by the alpha beta depleted blood stem cell transplant. And the indication is for patients with Fanconi anemia. The goal of the project is to complete a phase 1 clinical trial that's testing this new regimen in combination with the transplant. The funds requested are 11.8 million for this particular application. So a little bit of background on Fanconi anemia and the condition. So conditioning regimens in general, which are used for blood stem cell transplants, are needed in order to remove the existing diseased blood stem cells before the new transplant can take place. And that often requires the use of toxic agents that are genotoxic, meaning that they can cause mutations in cells and affect the DNA of cells and potentially cause cancers or tumors. For patients with Fanconi anemia, those individuals have a significant propensity for developing leukemias and other solid organ cancers. So going through this process is particularly difficult because it exacerbates the possibility of developing tumors and or cancers. So the value proposition of this project is that the proposed therapy utilizes a new conditioning regimen that makes use of this antibody that is not genotoxic and holds the potential for a much safer and more effective blood stem cell transplant in patients with Fanconi anemia. Why is this a stem cell or gene therapy project? The candidate is a biologic that acts on blood stem cells and is also used in conjunction with a blood stem cell transplant. In terms of other projects in our portfolio that are similar, we have one other clinical trial that utilizes the same candidate, actually, the monoclonal antibody to deplete blood stem cells, but in a different indication and led by a different team. But it is also testing this conditioning regimen in that indication. And that is also a clinical trial phase 1 award. In terms of previous funding for the applicant team, so this applicant has received CIRM awards in the past. 3 of those, which were CLIN1, a DISC2, and a TRAN, have all now closed out, but continues to be the PI is the program director for one of our alpha clinics. And so these are all the different projects that this applicant has had, and all in general have accomplished their milestones on time and have generally been successful projects. So this is the grants working group recommendation for this project. This received a score of 1 with 10 votes for a score of 1, 3 votes for a score of 2, and 2 votes for a score of 3 from the panel. It received a DEI score of 9 on the scale of 1 to 10. And the CIRM team recommendation is to fund this for the award amount of $11.8 million. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you for consideration of this application.
Vito, you're on mute.
Thank you, Gil, for that. So I would like to hear a motion to fund application CLIN2 14315.
Anne Marie has a question, Vito.
Before we have a motion. Okay, Anne Marie?
Or we can wait for a motion either way. Anyway, here's my question. I don't have a question on the merit of the application for sure. The amount, requested to the CIRM is pretty high. I assume it's among the highest grants that we may have funded ever. You may have said it, but is there a matching fund? And how does the team justify such a high funding? Is it a phase 2, a phase 3?
So this is a phased 1 trial. So the award amount is not unusual. So it is not the highest. So the highest that we can fund is 15 million. And we actually have one that is requesting 15 million in this group of applications. The highest award amount that can be requested for this type of phase 1 project would be 12 million. No co-funding is provided, and it's not required because this is an academic institution where we don't impose a co-funding requirement for a phase 1 project. But in general, this is within the range of projects and budgets that we typically fund. That said, and I mentioned this before, we have been looking at specific ways in which we can provide to you more data and information on the benchmarking that is conducted by our grants management team. So all of these projects are indeed benchmarked. And we also get advice and recommendations from the grants working group itself that often point out specific areas where they think costs may be high for us to take a closer look. So following the approval of any award, the grants management team does take a closer look to ensure that all costs are allowable and within a reasonable limits. And the other thing that we do is ask for additional justification from the applicant where it may be warranted.
Yeah, Gil, thank you. You always, respond with the, in a very convincing manner. For one thing, $12 million is not unusual for a phase one. That's roughly the cost of a phase one. In that case, it's explained by the fact that there's no co-matching or matching fund. And I know the CERM team is very diligent in managing that part of the project as well. Maybe my second part of the question is, the CERM so far has a pretty broad pipeline in single cell disease, which this one is about. Is that right?
This one is with a rare disease, the Fanconi anemia.
Sorry, excuse my comment. I got confused between all of that. Thank you. No more comments on my part.
Okay. So I'd like to go back to regular order where we ask, just a reminder to board members, making a motion is not an indication of your support or lack of support for it. It's just a method of putting an issue on the table for discussion. So I'd like to start.
Motion. I move the matter.
We have a movement for consideration by Marvin. I need a second.
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 Fisher.
Okay.
Hi, Fred.
The floor is now open for further discussion by board members.
Fred has his hand raised.
Thank you, Fred.
Hi. So given that a third of the GWG members wanted this proposal to either come back after some more work or go away altogether, can you give us some insight into what those issues were and whether or not they should give us pause?
Yeah, that's a good question, Fred. Thank you for asking. So this was an application that went to the grants working group a couple of times, meaning it had received it to and came back, I believe, and there was significant discussion about the merits. There was no concern about the team itself, the significance of the proposal in terms of what it's trying to do, nor its overall rationale for doing this. I believe where reviewers were divided was ultimately on whether this was going to have an impact given the design of the project or not. And so there are short-term benefits that using this conditioning regimen would bring to the table for patients with Fanconi anemia. That would mean less likelihood of experiencing graft versus host disease, as well as other side effects of the conditioning. So the conditioning overall would be an improvement. Where some of the reviewers had concern was that it may not answer the longer term question of whether this conditioning regimen actually reduces the incidence of other tumors or cancers that result from having the conventional conditioning regimen, because it may take up to 15 years and it may not be designed properly to tease that out. And so that was one of the main points of discussion and concerns. The panel overall felt that there was sufficient significance, and the majority of the panel members thought that the opportunity to decrease the morbidity, the mortality on the short term was certainly well worth the investment in this particular project.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other comments from the board?
No more hands raised, Vito.
No hands are raised. Thank you. Is there anyone wanting to comment from the public?
There are none.
Thank you. Raphael, I think we can close the motion and take a vote.
Okay, Isabel Dudon, just a reminder, you are conflicted on this one. All right, so from the top, Dan Bernal.
Aye.
Thank you. Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Judy Chow,
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey.
Yes, except for those in which I have a conflict.
Okay, we're doing them one by one, so I think you don't have to do the caveats this time.
Great.
Anne Marie Duliege,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Thank you. Fred Fisher,
Yes.
David Higgins. No, okay. Vito Bashani,
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard,
Yes.
Rich Lahada,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
and Marvin Southard. Okay, thank you. And no David?
No, David.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Gil, the second application.
Okay. Second application is CLIN 214516. So this is also a clinical trial. It's entitled Phase 2B Clinical Study of a Topical Ophthalmic Human Mesenchymal Stem Cell Secretome for the treatment of persistent corneal epithelial defect. This is basically eye drops that are produced from the secretions of mesenchymal stem cells that contain factors that allow healing of the cornea for patients that have persistent corneal epithelial defect. The indication obviously is for such patients. The goal is to complete a phase 2B clinical trial. The amount requested is 15 million, which is at the maximum amount, but the applicant is providing co-funding of 14.3 million. 40% is required for a trial of this type. So a little background on the persistent corneal epithelial defect, or PCED, which results in delay of corneal healing, and that can be due to trauma, disease, or a variety of other factors. And this delay initially might be pain and redness, but it can progress to infection, corneal ulcers, scarring, and even ultimately lead to blindness. PCED is a significant burden on patients and caregivers. The current standard of care involves treatment of the damaged tissue and prevention of further damage where possible. There is one approved drug that's called Oxervate, which is for treatment of PCED in only a subset of patients, so about a third who have a particular etiology for that condition. And the proposed therapy would offer, in this case, a treatment that's aimed at repairing and healing corneal tissues, regardless of any etiology across all patients. Why is this a stem cell or gene therapy project? The therapeutic candidate is manufactured from mesenchymal stem cells. The other projects that are in our current active portfolio that are similar, well, we don't have anything that's directly addressing this condition. The closest thing is for limbal stem cell deficiency. This is a phase 1 clinical trial. CLIN 2, the candidate is autologous limbal stem cells. That would be the only project that is anywhere near the current proposal. This particular applicant has not previously received a CIRM award, so this would be a first for this team. The recommendation from the grants working group is as follows. We had a score of 1 given by the panel, with 10 members giving it a score of 1, 4 a score of 2, and none a score of 3. The DEI score is a 9, and the CERM team recommendation is to fund this project with a requested amount of $15 million. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to discuss Clinmore 2-14516, please?
Sorry, it's actually a motion to pass, right?
Yes. Sorry. Thanks, Ben.
So moved.
Move.
Isabel.
I'll second.
We have a movement from Isabel, I think, and a second from Marvin. Apologies if I got that wrong. Okay, the floor is open to discussion. Might I start with a question, Gil? $15 million for a clinical trial that involves topical eye drops, if you will. Is there a justification for that? It must be in the manufacturing component.
Yeah, so these are produced from mesenchymal stem cells. So in order to generate the product, you still have to grow the stem cells and collect the secretome, as it's called, that contains the factors that are then used to put these together.
And there are no hands raised, Vito.
If I can continue with that, do they estimate how many patients they're going to recruit and where these patients will be?
Yeah, so they are recruiting a relatively larger number of patients for this. This is a phase 2B. So this is oh my God, I thought I had that written down. I think it's on the order of 50 or more. I can look that up just to be precise, but they also have several clinical sites where they're looking at this. Pabla or there's on the call have that data point. We can provide that to you.
Okay, well, I know it got a DEI score of 9, so must have considered all of those factors. All right, there's no, oh wait, we have Jen, we have, and then Isabel.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in for Gil. It's 90 patients will be treated, 270 enrolled, and I think it's over 42 sites or so estimated clinical sites.
Thank you, Jen.
240 enrolled. Okay, Isabel, please.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you. And I'm sure I will be put in my place if this is an editorial remark and not allowed, but I think it's wonderful. Pardon me?
You are allowed.
Oh, thank you. I think all of these, the work of many of these is fabulous, and I'd love to see all of it come to market. My concern is that it comes to market and the very people that we talk about in terms of inclusion and diversity cannot afford the product. Even middle Americans can't afford the products. And I'm wondering if, sorry guys, if this goes to politics, you'll tell me, whether or not we can even have any say with the legislature about assessing, given our investment, whether when they go to market, there are some kinds of reduced pricing available given your SES or your, I just think that somehow we can invest in all of these great finds, but if people can't afford them, then what is we responsible citizens as well, and as oversighters on this board actually doing to help ameliorate that inability to engage in something that is healthy for each patient?
Can I answer for CERM?
Please.
So in our IP regs, there are sections for access and pricing. So any entity that is commercializing a product that originates with CERM funding, will have to provide an access plan for the commensurate with the size of the company and for the indication. And that access plan will be presented to the board. So the CERM board will be able to see the access plan and we don't go into specifics about it, but actually approve it as well. So that's, that'll be up to the board. There's also a section on pricing, and it's actually linked to state law. I think initially back when the first set of regs was passed in 2009, there was a reference to the California Drug Pricing Program, which was passed by the legislature but never funded. But if there is a successor program, they would also be bound to that successor program for drug pricing. But they do have to provide an access plan to the board. I just wanted to provide that context.
Thank you, Ben. May I follow, Mr. Chair? Because I partially, shame on me for not being totally aware of that. But second of all, have we ever had something come before us in terms of this kind of review? And thirdly, have we actually held, maybe we haven't done one yet, but have we actually held anybody's feet to the fire on making sure that they're following the rules and regs?
We actually, none of our programs have yet achieved that stage in which they have to provide that access plan.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Isabel, if I may.
Yes.
These are the very issues that come before the Access and Affordability Working Group. And that's something that the internal team will be providing different tactics to get us closer to being able to achieve that mission. And also, I want to point out that the patient support program, once it comes, it gets through and we get somebody to come in and handle that for us, those funds can be used for things like this, for access to some of these trials and products. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. And thank you, Ben. And Ben, if I could ask you, I don't know if I'm the only person interested. If you could send me a reference to the government code where where I could read on the regulations on drug pricing from 2009.
Yes, I'll go find it.
Thanks.
And Vito, once you freshen up on that, you can come and give us a little primer.
Let's hope that this will become an even more pressing issue as more things come this far along
The market, yes.
Yes. So thanks for that, Isabel. Raphael, are we to the point with no other hands that we could conduct?
No public comments? No, nothing. Yep, we're ready to vote. And there are no conflicts on this motion to fund CLIN 14516. Starting from the top, Dan Bernal.
Aye.
Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Judy Chow. Judy? All right, come back.
Yes, sorry,
Thank
I
you.
forgot to unmute. Yes.
No, no worries. Leandra Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. Anne-Marie Duliege.
Yes.
Isabel Durong.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Thank you. Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Stone. Okay. Vito Imbashani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marvin Southard. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gil, for number 3.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next application is CLIN 1-14602. Being a CLIN 1, this is not yet a clinical trial, but pre-IND or IND enabling activities that the project would propose. The title of this application is Clinical Translation of autologous regenerative pluripotent stem cell therapy for blindness. Therapy is an autologous induced pluripotent stem cell derived retinal pigment epithelial cell product. The indication is for any maculopathy, as they are termed, that would be related to retinal pigment epithelial atrophy. So this is where the epithelial cells atrophy for some reason and cause a variety of diseases such as macular degeneration. The goal is to complete the preclinical studies to file an IND. The amount requested is $6 million. The co-funding amount provided is $1.7 million, although none is required. The background on this proposal: maculopathies such as macular degeneration and Stargardt disease represent an unmet medical need, as there are no approved treatments that directly address the problem of retinal pigment epithelial atrophy that can lead to these conditions. Collectively, maculopathies are the leading cause of blindness in the developed world. The value proposition for the proposed therapy is that it offers the potential for a safe and effective treatment that may preserve and even possibly restore vision for some maculopathies. Why is this a stem cell or gene therapy project? The therapeutic candidate is manufactured from induced pluripotent stem cells. In terms of similar projects in our portfolio, we have earlier stage, the CRAN1 pre-IND project that specifically addresses age-related macular degeneration and uses allogeneic neural stem cells as the potential candidate product, but we don't have any other projects in our active portfolio that would address more broadly the maculopathies that are related to the retinal pigment epithelium atrophy. The applicant has received a CRAN award that is actually the direct predecessor to this one. So this would represent a continuation of the project that was initially funded under a CRAN award for maculopathies. The project outcome sought for the CRAN award was a pre-IND meeting, which was completed, and milestones were all achieved on that, a couple with some delays due to the pandemic, but otherwise progressed towards what is now this CLIN1 proposal. So the recommendation from the grants working group is overall a score of 1, with 13 members giving it a score of 1, 2 members giving it a score of 2. It received a DEI score of 8, and the STEM team recommends funding this award for the amount of $6 million as requested. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Zambrano. A motion, please, to accept this application.
So moved.
I second.
Good. The floor is open to discussion on maculopathy.
There
There are no
no
discussions. Gil, I think this is testimony to the thoroughness of your review. There are no questions. Do I hear anything from the public?
There are none.
All right. Mr. Chief Counsel?
All right, we're going to vote on a motion to fund CLIN App 14602. Mark Fisher Colbury and Carol Watson are conflicted off this one. So taking it from the top, Dan Bernal.
Aye.
Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Judy Chow.
Aye.
Thank you. Leandra Clark Harvey.
Aye.
Anne Marie Duliege.
Aye.
You. Isabel Duron.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Hick. Oh, not here. Vito Ambashani.
Yes.
Steve Juilliard.
Yes.
Rich Lahada.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
You. Joe Panetta.
Yes.
And Marvin Southard. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Counsel. Gil, I think you're up to number 4, application number 4 now.
Correct. Thank you. So this is the last application. This is also a CLIN1 IND enabling study. So this is CLIN1 14764. The title is Treatment of Temporomandibular Joint, or TMJ disc complex. The therapy is a tissue engineered implant that uses expanded allogeneic chondroprogenitor cells as part of the implant. This is for defects of the temporomandibular joint disc complex, and the goal is to complete preclinical studies to file an IND. The funds requested are $6 million. There is no co-funding provided, but none is required from this applicant for this stage of work. The clinical background on this TMJ, the joint itself, of which we have 2, connects the lower jaw to the skull and allows for basic actions such as chewing, talking, yawning, speaking. It allows the jaw to move, to open and close, as well as to move laterally sideways. So it's quite a complex joint, actually. And pathologies of the TMJ occur in 5 to 25% of the general population and can be obviously pretty debilitating as they become more severe. About 70% of the TMJ pathologies involve the disc itself and involve replacement of or require replacement of that. The current standard of care includes steroid injections and removal of the TMJ disc complex, which can result in further joint degeneration. For end-stage cases, the only total joint replacements are available. So what the proposed therapy would do is provide or fulfill an unmet need between the early stage and the very end stage cases, and the possibility of TMJ disc complex healing and restoration where possible to regain some function. Why is this a stem cell or gene therapy project? The therapeutic candidate is composed of chondroprogenitor cells. In our portfolio, we really don't have any active awards addressing TMJ pathologies or anything that I could find that would be similar. We do have an application that was previously funded to this applicant. This was also it was a trans-stage project for cartilage injury repair. They were funded to conduct preclinical studies between 2013 and 2016. This project is unrelated to the current proposal, but they achieved their milestones and were otherwise successful with the previous term award. The grants working group recommendation on this project is to fund. There were 15 votes for a score of 1. There were 0 votes for a 2 or a 3. The DEI score is an 8, and the CERN team recommendation is to fund this project for the requested amount of $6 million. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sembrano. That's a nice presentation. May I have a motion to accept the application?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Fred second.
May I start with a question, Gil? Are all of their patients have this condition as an acquired condition, or are they looking at infants or other young people with congenital problems with their cartilage?
Yeah, that's not specifically specified because they're not yet at the clinical trial stage. Their focus is on activities to develop the manufacturing for the product and other preclinical studies to determine safety in animal models. So I don't have information on whether the intended patient population would be broad enough to include different conditions for the CMJ pathologies.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
I see none.
And from the public?
No.
Okay,
Price is not.
no one wants to exercise their TMJ in discussing this any further, so.
Yeah.
And no further comments, so, Mr. Chief Counsel?
Okay, we're going to vote to fund clean application 14764. No conflicts on this application. Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Judy Chow,
Aye.
Deandra Clark Harvey,
Aye.
Anne Marie Duliege,
Aye.
Isabel Duron,
Aye.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
Vito Imbasciani,
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard,
Yes.
Rich Lahada,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
and last but not least, Marvin Southard. Motion passes. I think that's it.
That's it, and I want to thank our review team and Gil especially for the presentations. And we are at that point where we can go into closed session. Oh, I'm sorry, Isabel, I just saw your hand go up.
That's okay. I just got it up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A point that I'd like to raise, and I don't know if Gil has carried it this far, but first of all, I want to thank Gil and the team for a very robust rubric for the DEI scoring. And I'd like also to commend the science review folk for starting to really understand the need to, I think, equalize the DEI score along with the scientific score. I think that's equally important. Finally, I think 6 as an approval is a little low. I think it needs to be between 7 and 10 in terms of a really quality plan. And finally, what I'd like to know is whether or not we actually have created metrics to measure success of this plan as they proceed through the research stages. I mean, it's one thing to write up a good plan, but are they following through? And are they being able to show us that, in fact, they have created that inclusion pathway and that they've been successful at whatever step there are in recruiting and making sure that the communities we're talking about, when we talk about DEI, are in fact we're seeing an increase in their participation and their ability to participate at the research stages and the implementation stages.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Ron. I think that's an excellent question of not just setting up high standards at the beginning, but let's see, in a sense, you're asking for benchmarks as we go along. And I like that very much. Maria Bonneville and I are going to promise the board that any question raised at the board is going to get answered. If not at the present meeting, we're going to come back to you with an answer. I'm wondering if anyone on the staff wants to take a stab at this right now. Otherwise, we may ask someone to report back at the next meeting.
So I can take just an initial stab and say that, yes, this is something that we are actively working on and thinking about. So we've already, implemented a way in which the applicants provide in their progress report data on, for example, the enrollment as it pertains to all the demographics that we asked for at the beginning, and also implementing milestones that are related to specific DEI activities that are specifically outlined in the proposal. So now the application itself asks for not just the scientific milestones that they'll accomplish, but also the milestones as it relates to DEI, so that we can better track their progress against those milestones. But in terms of bringing back data to you about how that is working and ways in which we can improvement. I think that Abla and her team are working on that. Jennifer Lewis as well is working with them to develop and amplify what it is that we can do at that stage. So we are certainly actively thinking about that. That is clearly an important element that we have to follow through with to ensure that the applicants are following through on all of this.
May I say, Mr. Chair, sorry, Fred, just to follow through. I think that it would be really critical to, in fact, with those milestones, see what successful DEI looks like, and then also put that out for the public and for other institutions to see, because I think we're establishing a very high level, a platinum plan, I'd like to think, for what DEI really looks like in implementation in academic institutions and research and other organizations that do it. And I would like us to be able to show them not just, hey, we wrote a good plan, but this is how we watch and measure and determine what is successful along that, excuse me, along that pathway. Thanks, Gil. I really appreciate that.
No, brava, another way to lead the nation in such quality measures. Gil, that was an excellent first stab at some might argue you don't need anything more than that, but you'll report back. Fred.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the place to do it, and if not, we'll find another place. I was going to respond to Isabel's observation of a score of 6, and what that actually looks like at the GWG, and why 6 is the bottom threshold. I could do that quickly, or I could save it for some other time, whatever you prefer.
Well, Fred, we're actually at a point in the meeting. We have no other, we have no work of the board that requires us to go into closed session. So I think you're perfectly at the right part of the meeting to make these comments.
Great. So Isabel, I appreciate everything you said and agree with everything you said. So this is only to add color to the process, that because I don't know that we've ever been on a GWG work group connected to CLIN or TRAN or anything else. So the reason 6 is the bottom is that's just the way the rubric is structured. Score of 6 to 8 is responsive. And so that's why 6 is the bottom, because it is deemed that the applicant has responded sufficiently to the DEI question. Where 6 is a score, in my experience, and others on this call can add their own perspective and correct me where they think I'm wrong. Applicants get a 6 when they are depending on the sites for DEI related outreach and inclusion. And what we've seen over the last several months as the DEI imperative has been reinforced to the applicants and as part of the application process, that we are educating the applicants about the importance of DEI, and we see them prioritizing it in a way that they haven't done before, and they're acknowledging this in their applications. They're saying just the other day, you know, they say things like, we will start to train our staff on DEI issues and cultural sensitivity. We will start to add sections to our website that define our DEI initiatives. And so our application process is really forcing companies that have been myopically focused on moving their idea forward and not considering DEI at all to do so for what often sounds like the very first time. And they're actually relying on the sites, which are often our, the word is escaping me, you know, our supernova clinics. They're relying on them and their well-established DEI plans to help them achieve the outreach and inclusion goals. And so to A 6 ends up acknowledging that they have addressed it and that they will address it. And that's why I agree with everything you say in terms of actually measuring what they actually do is really important around that. But a 6 really says, okay, you get it, you recognize it, you have a plan to get there, both for the specific application, but also, for your organization as a whole. And so unless we change the structure of the rubric, 6 becomes a way of signaling, yeah, you've sort of done the minimum so that if your scientific score is strong enough, you'll get funded. But you've got work to do, and they seem to acknowledge that in the applications. So anyway, hopefully that helps understand why 6 is the bottom and what 6 looks like when we're reviewing these applications, at least to me.
So you're saying, Fred, that's the duh moment. Duh.
Well, it's the aha moment is the way I would. And for these companies, it really is an aha moment when you read these applications, and they're quite transparent about the fact that they really haven't considered it in the past, but it is our review process that is sort of forcing them to do it, and they don't seem reluctant. What they do and how they do it, I look forward to figuring out how we're going to assess that and what that's going to look like.
Exactly. Thank you.
You're on mute, Vito.
I'm sorry, Dan and then Marvin, please.
Sure. Well, thank you, Isabel, for raising this important issue, and also Fred for your further explanation. I think, Isabel, I'd call it either the duh moment or the yeah, but moment. So, if you look at an academic scale for grading, a 6 out of 10 or 60% would be a D. And that seems to be a pretty low threshold for understanding of DEI and incorporating it into their proposals. So I am very interested, along with Isabel, in really diving more deeply into how we measure their DEI throughout the course of the project. So I just wanted to add support to what Isabel said, thank Gil for his explanation, and offer to be a part of that process moving forward.
Great. Thank you. Marvin?
I just wanted to support what Fred said, but also to say that as I've reviewed the DEI in multiple applications, since the implementation of the rubric, they have improved vastly. So one of the things that's also evolved is the 6s now are higher than the 6s used to be. And I think we have changed the game already.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the comment. I don't see any other hands raised. Unless there's any other topic, I'm going to ask for comments on any subject matter from the general public.
There are none.
There are none, Mary Ann?
No.
In that case, unless there's any new business from members of the board, congratulations. You've actually ended a very, very full agenda 5 minutes early, considering we started 10 minutes late. All right, so I congratulate you all. Thank you all. This was a really great meeting. You made it very easy for me on my maiden voyage, and love working with you all. And one side note to Fred, if you'll just check your texts. Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Are we on?
I'm not